Hello, YouTubers. This is another session where I am joined today by my friend here, Milan Tonicic. Did I say your last name right?
It's Doncic, but yeah, uh,
Toncic.
almost.
Okay,
Yeah,
Toncic. And Milan here is basically he's been a great contributor to a lot of open source projects, standard compliance open source projects. He's been helping a lot of people, actually understand our engineering standard. And basically he himself is very avid when it comes to building, end-to-end APIs, making sure it's test driven. And today, we're gonna work together. This all happened out of an issue in open source. Basically, he wanted to basically take an issue on a piece that he wasn't really sure about, which is basically building a grid in Blazor. So let me just show you guys here how this all started and why we're doing this session. So on OSSS portal, there's an issue open that says we need to render, we need a component that renders all teacher views, right? So Milan here came in and he said, hey man, I want to be able to kind of figure out how this, let's pair on this. I was like, I said, okay, let's pair on this, let's do this, and we coordinated together, and now we're here to basically show the world how we can render a bunch of records in a grid in a test-driven matter in Blazor, using, BUnit and using Syncfusion, using all these nice components that we talked about before. So just to give people a little bit of visual of what's happening here, I'm going to share the black screen here real quick so people understand. So for those of you who haven't been following much of my videos, let me just explain to you what's happening. There's this project called OSSS, Open Source Schooling System. And what the project is about is to provide high quality, open source, free schooling system. As long as the school that will be using this will donate the software funds to the poor, to the financial disadvantaged students. There's no contracts, there's nothing there. It's kind of an honor system, right? We have a backend API. We have a little API that sits in the back here called OSSS Core, right? Milan went and built a bunch of endpoints. We already have the retrieval teachers, we have retrieval students and all that. And then he started building the UI component for it. So there's this UI component, and this component has on the edge here something called an API broker. And what this API broker does is that it goes and hits the API and gets you the data raw as is from the API, and then maps it into a local model. And then there is a foundation service in here. So it's a foundation service. What this foundation service does is that it goes and basically makes sure that the data that's coming back in, if it's an input data, it does basic structural validation. If it doesn't, then it's a liaison. It just pushes the data upstream and abstracts away your core business logic from your API brokers. And then he went in and added in the view service. So basically this is a view model kind of thing. So he went in and said, okay, I'm going to build teacher view service. So this will take in that native model, strip it down, and just keep the things that we care about. So in here, this is a teacher view service. Today, what Milan and I are going to do is that we're going to create a base component, something called grid base component. And this grid-based component is exactly just like the broker. What it basically does is that it goes and says, let me abstract away the external UI component, external or native UI components that basically render on the screen. So that means your core UI logic doesn't know anything about Syncfusion or Telerik or native HTML. If at any point in time you decide to go and say, I don't want to use Telerik anymore, I'm going to switch over to Syncfusion or Progress or whatever the library may be, nothing is going to change in that core UI logic for you. So this is a very basic abstraction technique, that basically helps keep your components kind of in a healthy state, regardless of the change, least change possible. And then him and I are going to try today to go and build, the teacher's, component. This teacher's component is basically going to be calling that base component here, but it's also going to be calling the teacher's view. So this is the UI layer, and this is the API layer. So the data layer, data horizontally and UI vertically. And then just for testing purposes, we're gonna put that guy in a page, right? So we're gonna create a little page here just for testing, and we're gonna go and say I want to render all teachers. So I'm gonna say teachers page. there will be a point in time if Milan has the time to continue with us on this, there will be a point in time where we're building the entire dashboard with all the little details. We will talk about that and we will coordinate for that. Absolutely. So okay. So where are we going to start? So most of these things are already done, right, Milan? Like we already have the API, we already have the UI components, we already have all that good stuff. What we really need to start on here is the base component, that base component. And since we're using Syncfusion, this base component is just sitting on the edge like this, and it's taking from an external library called Syncfusion Grid or SfGrid. So there's SfGrid that's sitting behind the scenes here that basically is feeding that grid base, right? And maybe if time allows, I'll try this new capability in BUnit that Eagle Hansen was telling me about, excuse me, the other day when he was talking about basically stubbing dependencies. So we can actually completely stub that grid base instead of actually letting everything render as is. Okay, does that make any sense to you? Any questions at all before we get started?
Yeah, that makes sense. But I
Yeah.
think we have this base component for grid already. I think Sri added it.
Shri went and added the grid base. Wow, Shri.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, let's go. Bases, grid. Ah, she really did. Okay, let's just walk through this real quick because what really matters in this session here is just the component itself, the actual component. So let's just see what this does. So this is basically a type param. What that basically means is that this guy is going to take any generic parameter, right? And you're going to feed it any data source as an input parameter. So it has an input parameter here called a data source. And all that we really need to do is to go and say initialize that component and make sure that we pass in the right parameter, like the right type. The right type for us here will be a teacher view, right? That's what we're basically working with. So let me start this way. You and I are going to pair on this today. Let me increase the screen size here for people that are watching on their phones. And you and I, my friend, are off to a great adventure together. What do you think, Milan? Are you ready for that little adventure? Let's do
Yeah, I
that.
can't wait. Great.
Okay, let's do it. All right. So watch how this magic works, my friend. So let's go back to here. Here's okay. All right. Let me kind of minimize the font here a little bit, and I hope this is kind of visible to people. Okay. So what are we doing here today? We're gonna go and say, okay, I want to be able to create a simple component. So under views, there is bases, components, and pages, right? Under components here, I'm gonna go here and create something called teachers components. Because it's a folder, it's a namespace, right? Folders, we create them as plural. Singular, we create them as singular, like actual materialized files, right? And then inside this guy, I'm going to go here and create a simple Blazor component. So I'm going to go and say new item like this. It doesn't show StreamYard, doesn't show the thing, but I'm going to go here and say teachers component razor in here. So that's my razor component right here. Okay, let me bring the focus here so just people see us. There we go. Okay. Now, what we normally do is that we try to basically add in, like, do unobtrusive kind of model when it comes to building UI. What that basically means is that you'll see sometimes people go do this. This is your UI here. Like they'll go here and do this is label like this. You'll see this a lot. They'll go and do label like this, and inside the label they'll put value, and then in the same file they'll go and say, oh, public string value like this, get set like this, and then they go and say override, uninitialize, and then set the value. All of this in the same file. Like in the same file, they will do all that stuff. Why is that problematic? First of all, there's two reasons that's problematic as a pattern. Back in the olden days, people used to talk about having CSS and JavaScript and HTML in the same file. They call it obtrusive. Obtrusive code meaning that different different languages and different technologies are kind of colliding with each other, to kind of get something to work. It works great when it renders, but for the maintenance and for the engineers that are working on this, it's a nightmare because your brain is in this consistent state of switching back and forth between CSS and JavaScript and back to HTML and then back from markup and all that kind of stuff. So this pattern is horrible. It's a bad pattern that I really advise everyone not to do. Instead, we have this really cool capability where we can go and say, let me create a class file that has the exact same name. So it's teachers component.razor.cs. And it nests, look at this, Milan, it nests right under this guy, right? Which basically means all I have to do is just to call this guy partial. If I call that partial, it will understand that this component here is a part of this. Like if I take that code out, completely out like this guy's gonna error out. It's gonna say, I don't know what this value is that you're referring to, right? But if I go in the back here and define that value, just go here and say prop and then string and then value just like this, and you go back to this code, it will recognize it and will say, oh, okay, you already defined this in some partial class that belongs to that markup. Does that make sense? So far, so good. So what's beautiful about this is that the earlier versions of Blazor, we used to do something really terrible. We used to go and say, okay, let me create teachers component dot razor dot styles or dot styles dot razor because we couldn't support this. And then the Blazor team, they went in and they said, no, you don't have to do that. You could just go and create a simple CSS file. So if I go here and call this teachers component dot razor dot CSS like this, it nests right under the component. So now you have your business logic, your logic code in one file, and you have your style code in one file, and you have your markup code in another file. Isn't that much better? That seems like much better to me, right? Okay, let's go back to this guy. What do we really want to do here? Bear with me on this one because this one is really important. So every component out there goes through one of three states or more. One of three states or more. The first state that any component goes through is to basically be in a loading state. Okay, think about this loading state when you go and say, I'm still hitting the API and I'm still getting data back from that API. So I don't know what's going to happen yet, but I'm still in the initialization state. Okay, so that's the loading piece. And then after loading, there is two other states that you can come out from loading. You can either go into error state. Oops, I cannot connect to the API, so something blew up. Or you can go to content state, which is a stale state. You basically went to this case where you go and say, okay, I got my data's rendering, I'm in content state. I want people that are watching us to remember this very, very well because it's going to help you a lot, especially if you're a back-end engineer trying to explore the front-end world. This is paramount important because this is how we basically handle things. So you start with loading state, loading, and you go either route. You go either to content or you go to error. And that's totally okay. It depends on what happens through your application. So this is error, and this here is content. It depends on what you're doing with your application. It determines whether you're going into one route or another. Now, some people ask me this question, Milan, all the time. People ask me, they say, what is other states that you could possibly have, right? There's a state here where the content already settled and you're spinning up a dialog right out of this right out of this content that you have and you want to click submit. Then the component goes into submitted state, meaning that this is an external nested state under this guy here that basically says, okay, once the content is loaded, some action has been taken. And now with the component itself, especially if you're doing a SPA, a single page application UI, it basically goes and says, yeah, there's another state that is substate out of this content. The same thing happens with error. We do it, excuse me, we do it all the time. Let's say your page rendered an error state and you went and said, submit an error report. So you aired out instead of saying, oh, go screw yourself. I don't care about you. Just, here's the error and just go away. Instead, some people go and say, no, let's be nice. Let's say submit an error report. So if you click the button and say submit error report, you go into another state that's very similar to this, which is called submitted. So you go full circle back into a good state that basically says, okay, an error has been submitted, we're done here. Something like, thank you for submitting your error, we will contact you as soon as we can. Something to that effect. But the main ones that you really want to care about across all components are these three components, the three states: content, error, and loading. So let's just start with that. Let's go back into Visual Studio here, and let's create states. I'm gonna go under models. I'm gonna create something called views, right? And under views, I'm gonna create the same structure, something called components, components. And then under components, I'm gonna go and create another folder called teachers components. And under this guy, I'm gonna go here and say, I wanna create a state, something called teacher component state. And just like I said, this teacher component state is basically an enum, and it has one of these three states: loading, content, error. So far, so good. Any questions at all?
Um, yeah, I thought we are using the generic one, the component state that we already have Denon. So
I,
it
u- I
has.
used to I used to believe that, and I changed my mind, and I'll tell you why. Because I realized that some components has other states that other components don't. So if you start adding up to that same enum, you're going to end up with a long list of error submitted, content submitted. So now I decided to kind of keep it all focused. You'll see this pattern. This is my school of thought. Like, keep everything really separated. Have everything have its own exceptions, have it have its own models and its own tests. At any point in time, this is what I call building a monolith with a microservices mindset. Meaning, at some point in time, if I want to split my entire component or my entire system into smaller Lambda functions or Azure functions, I'm not going to have any trouble with it because it's a very independent component, completely separated away from each other. Okay, so and the reason why I would want to separate, like some people ask me this, is, well, your system is very clean. Why would you want to separate this into smaller components? The answer is scale. Let's say the teacher service gets a lot higher demand than the student service. I don't want to scale an entire monolith with some, 100 terabyte of data or something like that. Instead, I will split it out and scale that little component individually, and everything will just work fine. You'll just have a little broker and people will be talking to it, and that's all. Okay. So this is the reason why I have my own components. You'll see this upcoming one. You'll see that you have content submitted state, and you will have error submitted state, right? And you will have something like timeout state. Like, you have a timer in the back and you're waiting for someone to submit something, and then you display a completely different UI that says, sorry, you timed out,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot like when you log into a bank system, for instance, it's not going to stay there, right? As soon as you bypass 5 minutes, it will render a UI there, say, sorry, you've been inactive. Or in Netflix, when you're watching Netflix and it says, are you still there? When you're
Mm-hmm.
binge watching something, don't they pop up that say, are you still there? That's it. That's this guy. Okay, there's also another interesting state, which is like error awaiting, meaning that it errored out, but it's still trying underneath to connect with the server, right? Just like how Chrome
Mm-hmm.
does it sometimes. Like, if you have internet outage and Chrome is showing you this little dinosaur thing that's jumping on the screen, right? If as
Mm-hmm.
soon as the internet comes back, the page comes back. Why is that? Because underneath it's still pinging the server. It's still trying to kind of reach out to Google. So this is why I decided that every component is going to have its own state, and that makes sense to me. Okay, let's go back to this teacher component, my friend. So here's what we need to do. Before all and everything, that basically is telling me that the first property that I want to add in here, you know how when we do dependency injection, like if you
Mm-hmm.
look at this teacher view service that you did, right? You did dependency injection in here. You basically passed in iTeacher service and logging broker, right? You just did that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly same thing in here. But instead of using the constructor, you're just gonna go and say inject. And all you gotta do is just go here and say iTeacher view service. Do you know if you registered your teacher view service or not? Since you built that one.
Yes, I did.
Nice, thanks. There you go. Teacher view service. There you go. So that basically means I basically injected that service to be used by my component. There's no problem there, right? Why is this guy
Mm-hmm.
complaining though? Let's see what's wrong. Oh, because I'm outside the class. Hold on. Yeah, working. If I show you on my side like how big the screen is right now, just to make sure, I have like a 49-inch screen. So so right now I'm like, there's a lot of Visual Studio on the screen right now. Okay, so that's the first thing. I I want to pull in my dependencies, right? So I got my dependencies. Now let's go here and add in the second thing, which is teacher's
Stay.
component state. That's right. The state. Okay, so this is the state. That's the state. Good. What's the next thing I care about? Think about this in its own, evolution kind of order, right? We called the dependency. The state was in loading state. After we called the dependency, we got data. So that basically means I need a list of teacher view in here. Teacher view. Look at this. So this here, let me close this guy. Yeah, the new Visual Studio is lovely. If you don't write the entire statement, it will do some crazy stuff. So anyway, this is teacher views. That's our data source. What happens after we get the data? We need to render that data inside of a grid,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I need a grid where I can put that data in. So let's go here and say grid base. This is where Shree's component come in. And this grid base is generic. So I can pass in here a model that's teacher view, right? So
Mm-hmm.
then here, I'm gonna just call this the grid. That's all. It doesn't have to have any other name. Unless you have multiple grids, then just call it the grid.
Mm-hmm. And
Well,
the exception, right?
yeah. So the next step to this is to basically go and say, what if I rendered all the views and while I'm trying to pull that data, something blew up, something failed. What am I going to do then, right? So we need two things. We need an error message, and I need a label base, and that's the error label. Okay, what is
Mm-hmm.
this stuff? I'm not even gonna say, yeah, error label, error message. Yeah, perfect. So what these two things are, if something really actually, went haywire, I want to be able to communicate that my component has failed. Does that make sense? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so what are we gonna do now, Milan? We need to write a test that basically says, we need to write two tests. The first test is to make sure that each and every one of these is at a good state. Like if someone goes in there and say, Eagle was talking to me about this the other day, and he said, why are you testing the initialize for nothing? And I said to him, what if I go here and I do this, right? No
Mm-hmm.
test is going to catch it. We try to write tests to protect our code, right? So let's go write a test for this. I'm going to go down here. I don't know if I have the latest and greatest here. I really hope I do, but let's just go ahead. So I have students registration component. Let's go here and create a teacher's component like this. And under this guy, I'm gonna just create a quick file in here. And this file is gonna be teacher's components tests. Component tests. Okay, so that's my test. What do I need in my test? Like everything else in the world, I need to be able to mock my dependencies. Luckily for us, we have only one in here. So private read-only mock I teacher view service, right? You've done this already, so I'm pretty sure you're familiar with it. So
Mm-hmm.
this is this is the teacher view service, and I'm gonna go here and say teacher view service mock, so I can mock whatever it's doing. Okay, great. What else do I need here? I need my rendered component, so I can go here and say private, and then I can go here and say I rendered component. Excuse me. This is coming from B unit, and I can go here and say teachers component is going to be what's going to be rendered here, and then here rendered component. That's the teacher's rendered component. Okay, I want to call it teacher's rendered component. Okay, now let's initialize our test class. This is very straightforward. Teacher view component equal new mock teacher view component, easy. right? But in the previous, kind of services and instantiations, we would go and do what? We would go and say, give me the service first, and then let me use that service to pass in parameters to it. Does that sound familiar? Passing parameters to the
Mhm.
services?
Mhm.
In our case here, we're gonna do it a tiny bit differently. A tiny bit differently. What we're gonna do here is that we're gonna try to go and say, okay, instead of you rendering the passing in the parameters, we're gonna register these parameters. We're gonna be registering these parameters. Let me see why this guy is complaining first. This is iTeachers. Oh, I made it read only. Why did I make it? Actually, read only is okay because it's a constructor. Let's say teacher view. There you go. Okay. Now, let's go ahead in here and start this. So I already initiated the mock. I'm just going to go here and say this dot services. Oops, I don't have services. Why? Because I need to inherit in here that test context. That test context basically initiates some sort of a phantom version of your UI, right? So I'm going to go here in my services and say services dot add transient, just like you're doing in your startup CS. Add transient. Here you go, add transient, just like this. And I'm gonna go and say this is my service, and then I want to go and pass in the teacher view service mock.object. So this way I registered my teacher view service in here. So when I run this test, it knows what it's doing. Now, this is the unfortunate part, but hopefully not for long. I'm gonna have to go here, and my test doesn't need to know what underlying technology I'm using, Syncfusion, Telerik, whatever the case may be. It doesn't need to know any of that. Because we're running end to end and we're not really using stubbing at full scale yet, this would be a great session to go and use stubbing to kind of eradicate this usage of this. But now I have to go and say services dot add Syncfusion Blazor. So I'm adding the dependency of the dependency in here because I'm actually running the actual base component. So that's one guy. And then there's another guy that follows that because it's actually rendering everything. I'm going to go and add options. Add options, just like this. Sorry, so add services dot options. There you go. And then the last one is to go and say this dot JS interop dot mode equals loose. These three needs to disappear. And that's what we're going to be working on when we use stubbing. But for now, this is me just setting it up really like I'm setting up a startup CS.
Mhm.
Now, since I'm working with a grid, I need some sort of ability to generate random teacher views. So I know that they actually rendered on the screen. So let's go here and build a filler. I need a filler in here. So there's private, static, filler. And inside that filler, I'm going to pass in teacher view like this. You're already familiar with that one. So this is
Mhm.
create teacher view filler. So for those of you who have never seen this before, and I try to build every video and every content as if people have never seen, like there's no connection there. There's, you know, if you're watching it for the first time, it should technically lead you. It should be like a linked list that leads you to other content. I don't know if your teacher view has a date
No,
time. Oh,
it
it
has
doesn't? Oh, thank
no.
you so much. That
Yeah.
makes life a lot easier. Then I can go here and just say, I should just go and contribute to this guy and the guy that created Dynamics and just have datetime offset to be a native component that actually renders out off the bat. What is this guy suggesting now? It's saying use new. So there's this new thing in C# where you can do this, but I really hate it because it doesn't make
Mm.
any sense to me. Anyway, so what else do we need? We need a private static integer get random number because I want to get a random number of teacher views. So I'm gonna go here and say create teacher view filler dot create, and here's my count, and I'm gonna get random a number in here, right? So this is this guy, and then dot to list, I think, and this guy is not. Oh, sorry, I went way off the bat. Hold on. Oh, what happened to me? So
Mm.
this is here is a new int range with min 2 and max 10. 10 is not included. And I saw someone on OSSS put 150. I'm like, well, that's so generous. Why are you doing 150? Anyway, that's the thing about open source. You get to meet all kinds of people, right? I'm like, oh well, this guy got a little bit more money in his pocket. He's giving us 150. That's amazing, right? Anyway, create random teacher views, right? And I probably shouldn't be building this method not just yet, but I'm just preparing because this is going to be a part of the one commit that I'm going to give you. And then you, my friend, will be able to go and say, excuse me, make it pass. And making it pass, that's your learning. And don't worry,
Hmm.
I'll be right here. So create teacher views and then create teacher views. Sorry, create teacher filler and then create and then count and then get random number and then dot to list, right? That's the guy that we're trying to build. Are we over
Hmm.
120 characters net? Nope, we're not, but there's an extra line in here. See these little things that you would see in a PR comment? My brain is already catching it automatically. So the file is already perfect, basically. This is what we have. Now, here comes the interesting part. Let's go write some tests. What do you think about that? Did I make this guy partial yet? Yes, I did. Okay. Let's go and paste this in here. And instead of logic, we basically go and say render because we're testing rendering, right? And in this part here, we're going to start really simple, Milan. We're going to go here and say, I want to make sure that every single property on my component is at its own initial state, right?
Hmm.
So I'm going to go here and say public void should init component. See, being not a native English speaker, kind of kills me, but I'm getting there. Given, when, then. Okay, so what's the initial state that we should have? So this is teacher component state, right? And this here is my expected state. What do you think is my expected state, Milan? So this guy's
Loading.
loading, right? Because that's literally where we all are starting. And then
Hmm.
there's nothing else in there. So I'm just gonna go here and say initial teacher teachers components, since we're rendering a bunch. And then I'm gonna go here and say new teachers component. This guy is a little bit, this is how I measure, this is how I break. Do you see the end of this method definition? I try to stay within that range. So when you zoom out, it makes sense. I see some people do this. They put, a lot of stuff for 125 characters, right? And then I go and try to read their code and I keep going like this. I'm like, oh my God, why are you torturing me like this, man? Why? Why? Why is that? Anyway, so let's go here and start doing this. So this is initialize teacher component dot. So we're going to start from the beginning. So my service should be null. There should be no injections whatsoever at this point in time. Come on, should be null. I used to not test this thing, but now I do um, because it can actually be initialized. Someone can actually go and monkey with the code. So okay, and then state should be expected state. And then you also have the what else? We have the grid, right? Grid, or is it the list
Hmm.
first? The list, right? Teacher views. And this guy also should be empty, not null. No, it actually
Should be
should be
null,
null.
right?
Should be null. Should be null, I agree. Okay, so this guy should be null. Need to stay consistent with the shoulds and bees. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. Okay, and then I'm gonna go with initial teachers component dot. What else? I have the grid. This guy should also be null. I guess these are small enough that they can fit in there. I'll just do that. I really care how the code looks because that's why you're gonna be maintaining. So we're gonna try to stay consistent a little bit. I hope this one is not too far off, but we'll try. Okay, and then teacher component, and then after the grid, there's the error message. This guy should be null, right? And then the last one is the error label, and this guy also should be null. So far, so good. There's no reason this test would fail, but let's check it out. So if I run like this, let's see what happens. Oh, I wish you were here. I'd give you some tea. It's a problem. Okay, so let's see what this guy is saying. Block method. Ooh, I was explaining a point and It bit me right in the rear, you know. Okay, let's go here. What else am I missing? Value. Oh yeah, I had this garbage in here before, so let's clear this out. See, that's the beauty about unit tests, man. It's keeping you on your toes and it's keeping your stuff clean as you go. Wait a second, you just did the complete nonsense. Okay, so let's see. Did this guy pass? This guy is passing. If this guy didn't pass, I should probably quit my job and go find something else to do. So okay, so let's say users Sahan Habib, and then components, teachers, right? And I'm gonna go here and do a quick cleanup. This is what I normally do. If you go to analyze code cleanup or run code cleanup real quick, you can just kind of make sure things are
Mm-hmm.
clean. Oh my Lord, what is all this? What did it remove or change? Let's see. Sometimes it does this thing where it says I cleaned something up, but that something is invisible. You're not allowed to see it. You know, I think it's file encode or something. I don't know. Anyway, so there's this guy passing, and now here comes the serious stuff, my friend. In here, I want to go and say this is what's really gonna test what we're doing. We're gonna go and say public async um, task should render teachers async, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I started to follow a new pattern when it comes to, I don't think this needs to be a task because it's single threaded anyway. And I think that, what was the thing that, yeah, I think it's single threaded and you're not actually going to make the API call. The component is the one that's making the API call. And since it's returning a value task, you don't really need to do that. Okay. You don't really need to await anything. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go here and start from this. Let's start from the top. So the service will be initialized. We already know that because we already done that in a constructor. Let's start with the teacher component state, and this is my expected state. And this time, my state is gonna be content. That's number one. And then I'm gonna have a list of teacher views in here. Teacher view. I think they fixed it. Oh yeah, I think they fixed it. Okay, so this is random teacher views. Create random teacher views. Cool. That's another one. And then the next one is to go and say list teacher view retrieved teacher views, right? And that's random teacher views. And then the last one in here is what the expected, right? So this is my, see, it's like you're building a backend, right? But you're actually building UI. So it's really has this flavor of having backend work going on there. And now I want to just go and say call my mock and then set this up and then I'm going to go and say here's my service and this service retrieve all teachers async that returns async. Of course, mock is not there yet. There you go. Oh, look, it corrected my grammar too. That's pretty cool. Retrieved teachers views. That's it. So this is me mocking the response that's coming back and all my expected details. Now let's render that guy. Let's go here and say rendered teachers rendered component. This name is wrong. It should be rendered teachers component. Rendered teachers component. There you go. So let me go back here. So the render teacher and then render component. And this will be the teachers component in here, and that's it. I was talking to Eagle the other day, and I was having a hard time passing in parameters without having to create a whole set of things. And then he told me about this tuple idea, where you can just pass things in here, and it will be totally okay with it. I love it. It's simple and easy. He hates it, but I love it. He's like, I'm trying to get rid of this, but I think it's a great thing. Anyway, so this is you in here basically is actually rendering the component. You're actually using this. This is what the magic of this render component is. It's actually rendering the entire component. Now we just need to validate stuff. Man, that's all that it is. So I'm gonna go here and say render teacher component dot instance dot state should be equivalent to the expected state. right? This UI is gonna take our jobs because I didn't type anything. It knows. It's starting to catch up on my standard. But anyway, this is teacher compose state, and then what else do I want to care about? The list, right? So this is teacher views should, right, be equivalent to expected teacher views. Okay, great. What
Mm-hmm.
else? Rendered teachers component dot instance dot grid should not be null, not be null. I'm gonna start with this one. And then we're gonna dig a little bit deeper and we're gonna say this grid also, in addition to it not being null, it should, its data source should be equivalent to what? The expected, right? So I'm making sure my property is right and I'm making sure the grid actually got the right data.
Mm-hmm.
What else do we need to do here, my friend? We need to make sure that our error label, sorry, the rendered teachers component dot instance dot label, actually the error message is still should be null still. This is like when you go and say never, this was never called kind of thing. And then also the same thing when we go and say error label should also be null. That's our guy. And then the last thing is to go and say my mock should have been called one time, right? So service dot retrieve. Get ready, Milan. It's your turn. Letting you know. It's gonna be you now. Mock verify no other calls. There it is. That's the test. I'm basically writing a test that basically goes and says, and I'm trying to make tests friendly again. People freak out when you tell them, oh, we need to write unit tests because the way how they saw unit tests being written is really garbagey and scary. You know, like, oh my God, what is this whole mocking thing? How do I do it? I'm just trying to make it fit in my head. And apparently, if it does fit in my head, it'll fit in a lot of other people's heads, which is great. I basically set up my expectations. I said my expectation is that the state is going to be content.
Mm-hmm.
My expectations is that, you know, a service will be called, and my expectations is that the state content, the teacher view or render, I will have a grid actually rendering on the UI, which is beautiful. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about ref, which is backend C# logic that tells you whether there's a component rendering or not. I love it. I love it. We stole that from React, I think, but you know, it's pretty cool. You know, so and then there's render teacher component instance grid data sources right, and then that's it. I'm just saying render the grid. Now, let's run this, my friend, and get ready. Are you a contributor on that repository? Like, can you actually pull that?
No, I have my forked one, but not directly on yours.
Okay, since we're pairing, I have to add you as a contributor. So let me
Mm-hmm.
do that real quick. But while we're doing that, you know, let's just run the test. So look at this test. What is it failing? What is it saying? It says I expected the state to be content, but the state was not. Okay. So okay. So while we're doing that, let's show the world how we add someone as a contributor to any repository. So this is what is it? Tarafu, sorry, OSSS
Uh,
portal
yeah.
settings, access, password. And then let's add you in there. So you are Milan. What's your
Uh,
uh
M T
is
O
that
N C I C.
CIC, right?
MTONCIC. Yeah, that one.
Tuncic.
Yeah.
Tuncic. Okay. Gotcha. Dobro. Dobro. Gotcha. No problem. All right, your turn, my friend. You need to accept this invitation, and I'm gonna submit. I'm gonna go back to Visual Studio here. And I'm gonna make a commit for a failing test because the test has failed as expected, and I don't need to say async anymore. So just say should render teachers. And maybe if time allows, we'll go and try this stubbing thing and just, you know, tell Eagle whether I like it or not. Okay, so this guy here is a fail. There you go. You are it.
Mm. Okay, cool.
All right.
Should I share right away or first
Yep.
change? Okay.
Yep. Let's show the world. Let's show the world. If you're ready, let's just pull in the. I think you're gonna have to kind of purge or have another folder
Mm-hmm.
or clone that points to the remote.
Okay. So
Hmm.
this is our Triple S portal. I'm sharing my Visual Studio.
There you are. We can see it.
Yeah, I already fetched my all the remotes, so I can see here. So
Okay, so
your
there.
branch is components teachers. This one, right?
Yes, that's the one. But there is something I'm gonna need you
Okay.
to ask you. You're gonna need to go on your desktop on Windows, right-click display, and then increase the display to 175%. Welcome to
Mm-hmm.
my world.
Okay. I'm doing
So
that. Not sure what you see at the moment, but
it's just a right now it's just a black screen, but
okay. So 175%, right?
yes, it's gonna be really
Okay.
large on your screen. But that's so people because people are will be like yeah like maybe in the bathroom or in bed and they're just
Wow.
looking.
Where is my Visual Studio now? Okay.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah.
Okay.
Now things are visible. See, now if you look at the shared screen, now people can actually see your stuff.
Oh,
All right.
okay. Here
Okay,
we
so what
have
are we
the
gonna do
test.
now, my friend? Let's run the test.
Let's run the tests. Yeah.
That's a great idea. I agree. That's a great idea.
We should have one failing, right? So
That's right. That's the word on the street.
here, here, for the right reason. So expected to the enum to be, so we expected content, but we get the loading component. Okay,
That's right.
let's get there. Oh, I'm there, but I'm not there at the same moment. Okay.
You wanna you're gonna need to minimize a lot of things and
Okay, let me
okay. If you
adjust
zoom
this.
out, yeah, if you hit the control button on your yeah, there you go. You know the
Mhm.
stuff. Yep. So what are we gonna do now?
Okay, so we expected this component to be rendered, but it is not. If we get into the component and see what happens there, so we just have a bunch of properties and we are not setting anything, so we're not initializing the component, right?
Right. Let's
And
initialize that
also,
component.
do we
Go ahead.
have the view here? So where is my, okay, here. Uh, view here, we
Yes.
don't have grid here anyway,
Nothing.
so,
Yeah, there's nothing there yet. Not yet.
okay.
Hmm.
First thing, we would need to include this grid base.
Yep. Nice.
Okay, this is ugly. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with you 100%. Yep.
Using, and now, okay, we're gonna, what do we have here? So we have data source.
That's right.
So we can use that, and that should bind to our data that we have. So here,
Try to type this. Brian Parker would tell me this.
like
Type
this.
in teacher views. Yeah. Let's hope that
Mhm.
one works. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so
Okay.
that's you passing in the data in that grid, right? Now here's one
Yeah,
for you.
exactly.
How do we know that this grid actually rendered? We need to attach the property that's called grid on your backend code to the instance that has been initiated when you create this tag. Because when you create this grid base tag, it basically creates an
Mm-hmm.
instance of grid base. We just want to attach that reference. So all you gotta do now is
Exactly.
just
So
take a
here,
space and just do at ref. Go ahead. Yep,
this is the
yep,
grid. So we need
yep.
to reference this to grid, right? And
That's right.
maybe
That's it. That's all. Nope, you don't need that.
no.
Take that
Okay.
out. Yep.
So
Okay.
it's like this. So we have a component on the UI which is binded to the data that we have, and now we need to initialize this component. So override. What do we
Hmm.
have here? So we have uninitialized.
We probably need the
But
async
since we,
one,
yeah,
right?
the async, because we are calling
Hmm.
the API.
Hmm.
Okay, the service. Okay, so we don't know what this does, so we are gonna remove it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
now we have we need to basically call the API. So
Let's start
this,
from the top. You want to actually set up the state first, right? I think.
uh, do we? I thought we first
Probably
fetch the
not.
data and
Probably
then,
not. No, you're right. You're right. Let's go for it. Let's go.
Okay, so this dot service, I have this and retrieve all. So we are retrieving teachers, and we should assign that to the
Teacher views.
model
This
that
dot
we
teacher.
teacher use. Yeah, this dot okay here, and we can, so and the way that since it's an async,
Nice.
and here we need.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so we have the data,
Yep.
and we need to set uh, the state of this
Mm-hmm.
component, which is teacher, which is state
Yep.
equal this dot state.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it should be content. So we are loading the data and setting the state to content.
We might need to call state has changed, but we'll see about that in a second because I think they
Mm-hmm.
solved that problem. Okay. That should do the
Let's
trick, I think.
let's
Let's
see,
run the
maybe
test.
rerun the
Yeah.
test.
Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, it's green,
Look at
so
that.
nothing else to add.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Love it. So they did fix the problem. Thank you, Daniel and Steve Sanderson. Thank you, the ASP.NET Core team. I appreciate making my life a lot easier. Okay, so you have a passing test, right? But don't just take
Cool.
the, don't just don't just take the word for it. Go and put it on a dummy page and try it out. But that means you need to stand up
Uh-huh.
your backend API. Do you have the
Okay.
backend API running?
Nope. I'm gonna start it
It should be
now.
very easy. Literally, unlike a lot of other places you might have seen, you clone the code and run it, and it just runs.
Okay, I'm starting it, so let's see.
Oh, yeah, start it and go hit the. I don't know if I upgraded RESTful since there, but you should be able to hit the Swagger and just say select all teachers and see if, or retrieve all teachers, or get all teachers rather, and see if it gives you back anything.
Okay, so I'm here. You don't see my screen, right? You don't see my browser.
Yeah, share your screen, show people.
Okay, stop sharing. Okay, where is where am I? Okay. Uh,
The screen.
okay, entire screen, right? Okay, I'm gonna
Uh-huh.
share the entire one. So here's the
Uh,
API that we.
yep, I can see it now. Yep, and if you
Okay.
go to Swagger, does it if you'd say slash
Uh,
Swagger. How about swagger.html, I think? Or
mm,
is it API slash Swagger, something like that? Try this, just for now, slash API slash teachers.
mhm,
Hmm, there we go. Yay, you do have some people in here.
mhm.
Perfect. Now that the
Nice.
API is running, now this is the moment of truth where I know all the stuff you've been doing actually is going to work or not. So let's take
Mhm.
that component that you have and put it in any page. Let's go back to
Okay.
keep the API running and make sure your
Okay.
configurations are done right. So you are 44.37.9. Okay. Go
App
to
settings.
yep, app settings, and then 44.37.9. Perfect.
Yes,
Perfect,
exactly.
Milan. Okay, now let's run the world. Actually, let's put that component somewhere first. So just create a
Yeah.
dummy page, like under views. Do you see these pages? Page,
Okay,
pages,
so here is teachers components. I have here
pages.
are the
Yeah.
pages. Should we
On
just
the
in the index
yeah,
or?
yeah, yep. I'm okay with that. This is what this
Okay.
guy is for anyway. We'll try things out. Yep. Don't even worry about the name spacing or any of that. Let's just run it. It's just testing. We're not
I
gonna keep
can't
that.
look at this.
You
Sorry.
can't. You're one of those people. I really appreciate that. I truly appreciate that. Thank you for doing that. Okay, let's
Okay.
go. That makes sense why you were able to digest the standard because it's a very opinionated version of writing software. All right. Yep. Whoa. Access denied. Why? Let's see.
L.
Unknown type. OSSS teacher gender path gender 0.
Okay.
Unknown. Requested value unknown was not found.
Failed
What?
teacher service exception. So this is in teacher service. So it's trying to serialize something here
Mm.
from the
So
API.
yeah, does your API model like does the teacher gender model matches?
Yeah, let's see. So
Hmm,
here's the triple S. Uh, teacher. Uh, yeah,
gender
teacher.
or something. Okay, yeah. Um, you added a known, and that's not in the other one in the API, right? So
Okay, I'll
let's
check
go and
on
add. Who added
here.
that? Do you know?
Teacher. Let's not
Okay.
blame the people.
I'm not. I'm
uh,
not. I'm just wondering. I'm saying, where is this coming from? You know,
this is long time ago, so I guess
a while back. Okay, one,
it's
two, three,
outdated.
four. So this is portal.
So,
So
aha,
yeah,
yeah,
so just
there
need
is
you
a
just need to add
difference.
unknown at the very bottom there. That's all.
Hmm.
Unknown is the
Okay.
equivalent of saying I prefer not to declare or say what I am or whatever. Okay, now you're gonna have to
Hmm.
run your software again. I think this time is gonna work. I have a good feeling. I don't know, Milan. What do you think?
Let's see. I hope.
There you
Yeah,
go, my
nice,
friend.
cool.
So it renders, right?
We are having a grid here.
Nice, nice. What do you think about that? How easy was that? Pretty easy, huh?
Yeah, cool.
Okay, that's great, but now you owe me a test where, first of all, submit this one as pass, which is great. And the second thing we need to do, my friend, is
Mm,
to create the sad path. And the sad path is to go and say, when an error happens, right? Do you want me to write that test just to show you because this is the first time? Hmm, what do you think?
I'm just still trying to accommodate it to this
Yep,
screen sizes and yeah. So this is
pass.
pass.
That's
Let's
right.
maybe, yeah, okay. And I'm gonna commit and push.
Okay, perfect. Let me show you the sad path. Ideally, in a pair programming session, you would be writing a failing test, but since you're doing this, I'm taking this as an opportunity that we work together and show you things. I'm gonna do it.
Hmm.
So check this out.
Okay.
What if an error happens, my friend? What if, something horrible and terrible happened and we didn't know what to do with it? We need to render that as well, right? So I'm gonna go here and say, well, this is all good and dandy. I'm gonna write a new test in here. Public void should render error, right? If exception occurs.
Hmm.
So given, oops, when, then, and then I'm gonna go here and say, okay, I want to fake an exception. So this is some exception, and it's some because we don't really care what type it is. We just want it to happen, and we want to see if we are able to render it properly. Does that make sense? And then I'm gonna go here and say, okay, I also need a
Hmm.
message. So this is a random message. Get random message. I want some real message in the real world, a message that has multiple contents to make sure that nobody's doing any magic with trimming the data or any of that stuff. So I'm gonna go here and say private static string get random message. And then I'm gonna go here and say mnemonic string. And then I'm gonna go here and say get value, and I can here specify how many word count I can get. So I'm gonna go and reuse that get random number piece, right? So now it is giving me a bunch of words, right? So now when I go here and I say get random message, actually an actual message, and then I'm gonna go here and say exception message. That's my random message. And then the last thing I'm going to do here and say expected message or expected error message, right? And that's my exception message in here. So I'm going to this exception error message. There you go. Okay. So now I need to pass this in here. So this is expected, exception message. And then I'm going to go here and say anytime you call this mock component, setup service.retrieve all teachers async. This should say retrieve all teacher views, by the way, Milan. I'll let you kind of fix that on your own, but here's an exception that happens out of it, right? And since it's actually going around the exception, I don't think it's actually an exception. I'll just say exception. Okay. Here's what we need to do. What's our expectations, my friend? Before any of this happens, I need to go and say, you know, teacher's component state, expected state, and teacher component state should be erroneous. Is that right? That's the error message that should happen. So I'm gonna go render this guy just like I did in here. I'm gonna go here and say this this dot rendered teacher component equal render component teacher component. This is teacher's component. This is all good and dandy. And then I'm gonna start here with the state. So this dot rendered teacher's component dot instance dot error state, right, should be expected state. The state should now switch over to error, right? Okay, that's one. What else do I care about? Only the things I care about at the beginning. So error message should be expected error message. That's true. And render component dot the instance dot error label should, what do you think? Should not be null, right? That's this guy. And then again, this rendered
Not
component
below.
instance, error, not right. And this guy here dot value, right? Should be. I want to know that I passed in the right value, right? So expected error message right here. Okay, what is the last thing I want to do here? Well, there's a couple of things. This dot rendered component dot instance dot teacher views, right? Should be null. This dot rendered component instance dot grid should be null. That grid should not be showing on the screen, basically, right? And then the last thing here is that my mocked component, this guy, verify service dot retrieve teachers async have been only called once, so nobody's sneaking in there some retry logic in the system, right? And then the last thing here is that I want to go and say mock verify no other calls. So that's it. This is it. We're all done and done. So you see what I did there? I basically said when an error happens, render a message. This message that's coming from the exception is going to show up in here. And then make sure that the label is visible on the screen, but the grid is not. So we're hiding the grid away, right? And we're basically showing the actual message with the label. So let's see if this guy fails. This guy definitely will fail, but we gotta make it pass, right? Because we gotta wrap it up, right? Let's do that. There it is. It's basically saying, you know, I expected the system message to happen. It basically threw the exception that we threw out of the service. It didn't even continue because it tried to render the component and the exception happened and we didn't handle it, right? Here's a failing test, my friend. Have fun.
Thank you
Fail.
so much.
All right. Okay, let's do it.
I'm gonna pull it. Okay. And okay. Sharing the screen. It should be visible in a moment. So the entire one sharing.
Uh-huh. There you
Okay.
are.
Here we
Okay.
are. So again, rerunning the tests. There is one
Yep,
additional one added.
that's right.
Okay.
How do you like this pair programming thing? It's very interactive,
I'm
right?
enjoying, yeah. Yeah,
We're doing
it
we're
is.
doing ping pong basically. I'm passing you code and you're sending me code back and so on and so forth. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. All right, there it is.
Okay, yeah, so we're not getting the message
Yes,
here.
sir.
So this is the test that's failing.
Mm-hmm.
So we are expecting this service to fail,
Yep.
but it's not failing, right?
No,
So
the
if we go,
service is failing, but we're not handling
yeah,
the
we're
exception.
not
Yep,
handling
you're
the
right.
exception. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so here is the service. So we mocked it to return the exception, so to throw an exception, but we
Yep,
are not try catching it here. So basically,
that's right.
right. So what we need to do is to make try catch block here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and
Nice.
then catch the exception. Um,
So it's any
that was
exception,
the
right?
generic one, right?
Yeah.
Exception. Yeah.
We already did the work of making sure we send the right message underneath in these view services and controllers. You already saw the whole journey. At this point, we're
Mm-hmm.
just showing whatever message is on top, and that's it. Go ahead.
Okay. So here we got the exception. We need
Hmm.
to somehow localize it and then categorize it, right?
So your localization on the UI is not to create an exception, is to just put the message in your right component. Like you see, UI
Uh-huh.
doesn't care about exceptions. It wants visual, right? So let's assign the error
Mm-hmm.
message to the exception message. What do
Uh-huh.
you think about that?
Okay. Change exception dot message. Right.
Nice. And now what?
Okay, so now we have the message and that message needs to be shown on the UI, right?
Right, let's do that.
And we have a label, but we
That's
don't
right.
have it on the UI, I guess. So let's
That's
see.
right.
Where am I at the moment? Okay, not here.
Uh, uh-huh.
Okay, so here is our view. We have only grid here
Yep.
shown, and we need a label. So label
Mm-hmm.
base, right?
Mm-hmm.
Capital L, label B. Okay, base. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and we need to reference
Mm-hmm.
that. What was the name?
I think we called it error label.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You still
Yeah.
want to pass the value, right? Just like we pass the data source, right?
Okay, what do we have here? We have color
Value.
and we have value, right?
Yeah, let's
Okay,
send the value.
and uh, value is error message.
Message. Nice. Perfect. Okay. Do you think that would make the test pass?
Let's see.
If the test passes, I'm gonna give you all my money.
Okay,
Uh,
so we are binding our label
that's
to
right.
this label and its value to the error message.
So
And
so
here
what do
on
you
the
think about the
exception.
state? What do you think about the state?
Oh, we are not handling the state in the component, right? Here.
Okay. And we
Here
didn't set the state to error
we are
either,
not setting
right?
here. It's not state.
So let me ask you this. Does it matter if you set the state before or after you set up the error message? And why? Hmm.
Um, here.
It does
Uh-huh,
matter.
it does.
Uh, because if
Mm,
you try to render the component before the data is ready, it's gonna blow up, right?
mhm,
So let's go.
mhm, right,
Mhm.
right.
Yep, yep.
Okay, so this dot state teacher component state.
That's right. Perfect.
Okay,
Still, test is not gonna pass. But run. I want you to see why is that?
I think we are not handling the state in the component at the moment.
That's right. That's right.
We're not
That's
having a
true.
wrapper.
Yeah, but what's the error though? What's the error that's sending? See,
Let's
now you
see.
have
So
two
let's look at
errors.
this.
Huh.
Okay. Which one is this? So let's see here. Should render error if exception occurs. Okay. And it's saying that the
Hmm.
error label values is expected to be something, but
Mm-hmm.
it's
So
not.
so
So
I guess in your case you have to do at. So go back to your teacher's component and do at error message. Because the value takes a string. So it thinks that error message that you're adding in is a string. Run again, it's still gonna fail,
uh-huh.
but it's gonna be a more sensible failure. Yep. We love failure. We're engineers. We fail all the time. So what's the error message now? Ah, it's
Uh,
saying the grid
yeah.
is not supposed to be displayed if you have an error, but you're actually showing the grid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let me tell you, my friend, the story of Blazor, Pretty Blazor. Have you ever heard of Pretty Blazor before?
Uh, yeah, I heard, but not sure if I know anything about
Okay,
concrete.
let's go and install Pretty Blazor NuGet package in your Blazor in OSS portal.
Mm-hmm. So management packages.
Yep. If it's not already installed, I'd be surprised, but it might be. Just type in there Pretty Blazor. To my surprise, it's not installed. Perfect. Install it just on your, you just need it on your portal piece. You don't need
Uh,
it across the board, I don't think. So that web basically. Yep.
okay.
This thing it's at the very bottom. It says it has a button that's called installed. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Yep.
Okay.
So go up a little bit, just a tiny
Oh,
bit. There it is. Yep. So what is this Pretty Blazor, Milan? Pretty Blazor is basically a simple NuGet package I built a while back that helps engineers write conditions in markup. So you don't have to violate the unobtrusiveness of your code. Let's go back to your component and
mm-hmm.
let me show you. It's pretty cool.
Okay. So teacher's component is
That's
here.
right.
Okay.
Yep. So do this. Try this. Try to open up a tag. Let's first do at using's Pretty Blazor at the top. Pretty Blazor. Okay, perfect. Now here's what we need to do. Let's let's put a tag, and this tag is called condition.
Okay. Where? Here.
Just type condition. Yep. And then just type in evaluation, right? And inside this evaluation, let's examine the value of your state, your current state value. Do an at, open, close parentheses, and just type in state equal content or something like that. Parentheses, not squigglies.
Okay. State
hmm
equal. Uh.
hmm Teacher component state. You're gonna need to do a using there to pull in the. Let's do this a little bit. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that's fine too. Keep going. Now Visual Studio is freaking out
Yeah.
because of the document highlights and stuff like that. Yeah, click escape and just pull in the model for the content. So do you at using and then OSS portal web and then models and then views web dot teacher dot components dot teacher yeah, that's it. That will pull in the enum. Okay. So close this guy, close the condition, the tag. Yep. No. Just close it with a nested like child content in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then inside that guy, create another tag that says match. Yep. And then open close again with a nested components within, and then move that grid base inside that match piece. Yikes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Control KD will fix the world. Sure, you can do it this way too.
Yeah.
Copy this whole statement that says condition evaluation all the way down to the closing and do one like it just for error state. Yep, and just move
Like
that
that.
error state in there.
Okay.
Nice. Let's just make sure it's actually pulling the right stuff. So this is
It's
teachers component state dot content. Why is it not finding it?
complaining. Yeah.
What?
It freaked out. Maybe let
Oh, it's
me just.
teacher. It's teacher component. It should be teachers, but it's teacher. So go, yep,
Yeah.
there you go. And the second one as well. Now, my friend, try to run your tests again and watch some magic.
Okay.
Magic. Yeah. Looks like erroring everywhere though, but well, let's see. Yep. Gosh, this is annoying. What?
Yeah.
It all passed? How is that possible? What do you think about that?
Magic. Yeah. Pretty
Let's
Blazor making the magic around code.
so so here's let's test it a little bit in the real world. Inside your uninitialized business logic, like the component for the
Uh-huh.
back end code, the back end of the front end, just throw an exception in there. Let's cause trouble.
Uh,
Hmm.
here.
Just yeah, just throw an exception in here. Just say
Uh-huh.
throw new exception and put a message in there that says the world's on fire or something like that. Whatever you want. Yep. See, this is how you know you went so far in the world, right? You start, hello world, hi, I love the world, it's a pretty place. And now we're saying the world is on fire. That's how you know you're an advanced engineer. This guy's broken. Just do
Yeah.
escape and try again.
Oh
It's
my
broken. It hangs. It hangs. Yep.
Okay, I'm
Oh
gonna
my
just
God.
exit and load
Oh
it again.
no, you put us in a for okay, hold on.
No.
The the
Archie plus
the stream now
portal.
is like a for loop. I'll wait a second until you start your Visual Studio.
Okay.
All right, are you ready? Okay, here we
Yep,
go.
I'm gonna
All right.
pull.
Yep, let's run
Yeah,
again.
exception. Okay, run the tests.
So technically, when we try to run your component, actually, after you pass the test and all that, let's run it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's actually run the page and let's see if it will render the error. Yeah, of course the test will fail because we
Yeah,
created we
the
faked an
exception,
exception,
right?
right? But
Yeah.
let's now run it actually. This is us
Okay.
faking an error so we can see what happens, right?
Okay, don't ask me again means ask me again, right? Okay.
Yep. There you
Yeah.
go. The world's on fire. Run, right? So this is it, my friend. You just made it. This is the entire set. The one thing I want you to think about, how can you
Mm-hmm.
show a loading screen while the API is still retrieving the data? This is something for you to do as a code rub, just to think
Mm-hmm.
about. But other than that, just clean up your code and create a pull request, and you just created a UI component successfully. What do you think
Nice.
about that? Any
Yeah.
questions? Anything at all? It's pretty easy, right?
Nope.
Simple, easy, straightforward. And I'm actually about to roll out an even cleaner version of Pretty Blazor where you don't even have to say this match is only like an if else statement. So expecting an else statement. This the one I'm gonna roll out is gonna be much simpler than that. So you can just go and say condition match evaluate, and then it passes in this. So send this over. And then I'm gonna just add one tiny thing at the very bottom, so you already pushed the code, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did.
So here's what I'm gonna do. I was just talking to Brian Parker about this the other day, and basically he has a good point. Of course, you're not supposed to add in business logic on your UI. That's the whole point of having unobtrusive code, right? So here's what we're gonna do, you and I. We're gonna go here and say something to the effect of. So this is your component. I'm just gonna run all the tests real quick just to make sure that you didn't break anything. What do you think, Milan? Did you break anything? You tell me.
I don't think
You
so.
don't think you
I
did.
hope
Okay.
I didn't.
No, sir. I think you did just fine. Okay, so here's this guy. Okay, everything is passing in end to end. Now let's see here the component itself. Here's what I'm gonna do here. See that teacher component? I'm just gonna do this in here. I'm gonna be like prop, right? And boolean is content state. And I'm gonna go ahead and say is error state. Just like this. Okay. What that basically means is that I'm gonna go here and say is content state equals true, something like that. And in here is error state. This is a thing that I'm just trying with. I'm just telling you about this, just so you think about it, right? So what that basically means, we don't have to do that evaluation here anymore. We can just go here and say is content state and is error state. Isn't that much better? What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
So is error state, and this guy is content state. So let me see if that breaks anything. But this is just something I'm still thinking about. We're not going to change that code. Your PR is already done. I'm just still thinking about the best
Mm-hmm.
way to do this. See, all the tests are still passing. But the difference here is that there's no logic in here. Like your code doesn't have any logic at all in here. Is that right? So, so this is
Mm-hmm.
basically what I'm trying to do, either pass a function in there that says is the state this and let the evaluation happens underneath. I'm leaning a little bit more towards that. So basically something to the effect of building a little private function in here, right? And say is state, and then you pass in teacher component state, right? And that's the state here, and you're basically saying this dot state matches state. So all I have to do here, and I'm leaning a little bit more towards this one. I don't know about you, but I feel like this one here I can go here and say is state, so I don't have to create more properties. It scales
Mm-hmm.
better, right? So I can go here and say is state, and then I can go here and say teacher state dot content, something like that. So if the state is this, then that should work, right? And then the same thing with this guy, but I want the code to look pretty. It has to look pretty. So again, this is what we're all about. So this is error in here like this. So this guy would do that. Let's see if that would actually work. Let me run it and see. I think it's gonna error out because you have to encapsulate the actual call. So I have to go like this. See, now it's getting uglier. So this is what I'm thinking about these days. This is just for you. This is just a discussion between you and I. This is
Mm-hmm.
just me thinking, oh, how can I make this code a little bit more prettier? I like is content state. See, this guy's even blowing up because you're gonna have to go and do this actually. See, it's getting uglier and uglier,
Oh.
right? Yeah, it gets even crazier and crazier. So it's not really where I want things to be. Anyway, so this is this guy, and then I'm gonna tell you about a couple of code drops, just something for you to think about. Free points, my friend. So this should say should retrieve all teacher views. This one, that's one code drop, right? And this should say
Mm-hmm.
teachers. This one should say teachers component state. Teachers component state. Now, yeah, other than that, without any further ado, let's just go ahead and open up a pull request. I think we're in a very good state. Just remember to clean up these two things and we should be
Mm-hmm.
golden. So I'm gonna go here, OSSS portal, compare, and now you get to have pairing points and you get to have components. See? So this
Finally.
is uh, views. Uh-huh. Okay, so create. I normally try to install record to GIF because normally you put in here a Giphy that shows the actual component running in the PR. Just something for you to think about. Okay, man,
Mm-hmm.
cool. So now I'm just gonna look at the files real quick
Okay,
just to
I
make
will.
sure.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm just gonna look at the files real quick just to make sure things are good. Running the cleanup is crazy because it touches on all files. That's why I say run cleanup in its own code rub, so it doesn't hinder or disturb the existing actual code that you're running. I don't know who was, I think it was Mahdi. Oh, we have an extra empty line in here. Let me clean this up. Let's go back here. You'll tell me how you caught this, Hassan, and I'll tell you millions and millions of lines of code. I'll see it. I'll see it if it's even if it's like a million miles away. I'll see it. There it is. So I'm gonna go here and say, okay, here's a commit, code rub, remove extra line, and then let's push this upstream, and then let's go back to our UI here, and let's refresh the view. Okay, this is looking good, looking good. Looking good. Oh, we don't need this. We don't need that yet. This is. Remember when I was just showing you the CSS stuff? We
Mm-hmm.
don't need that CSS file, not just yet. So let's get rid of that guy. So this is another commit. Just code rub. Remove CSS file for now. Okay, let's go back here. Take a quick look. Oops. Share screen. Share. 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 And let's refresh this again. So this guy's gone, and you have the test. State error. Good. See how clean this is? I'm gonna make it even cleaner. That's the whole point. That's what we do, you know. It's called software craftsmanship. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool gig. All right, man. I love it. Let's go to town. Let's go to town. There you go. Merged, and we should be done. That pretty much wraps up building grids in Blazor. Do you have any questions, comments, anything at all? All good. Now,
No,
now you
all
can
good.
create
Great.
now you can create thousands of them. Now you know how it's done. We can create thousands of these components, and then when we build like a dashboard or whatever, we can just click on different buttons and it renders all these different types of data within that dashboard. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me in today. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your tenacity and your zeal and your passion to build great software and learning the engineering standard. And thank you all for watching us. We're almost an hour and a half now. Normally, when there's a Blazor thing, it takes a little bit of time because there's a lot to say. But as usual, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please feel free to drop a comment in the comment section. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in another video. Thank you, Milan. See you later.